Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network, a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. In addition to the advising, training, and business information that the local SBDC provides, we offer specialty programs as well, such as the International Business Development Program, or IBD. The IBD program works with established firms to enhance their global success. Our certified global business professionals provide confidential advising, training, and customized research to help companies mitigate risk, prioritize markets, identify financing, and grow export sales. The Virginia SBDC IBD program has helped hundreds of Virginia companies from a variety of industry sectors to enter markets around the world. Today's webinar, Trade Talk, Developing Strong Relationships with Your International Partners, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network IBD program. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Aaron Miller, International Trade Director, and Chris Van Orden, International Trade Assistant Director with the Virginia SBDC IBD program.
Thanks so much, Sheila, and it's great to be here with everybody this morning. Thank you again for joining us for this edition of Trade Talk. It's our new monthly webinar series brought to you by the IBD program, our International Business Development Program. As Sheila mentioned, my name's Aaron Miller. I'm the director of the program, and I'll be speaking today with my colleague, Chris, who is the assistant director, about how US-based exporters can establish strong relationships with their international partners and what you need to do in order to be successful overseas. So as Sheila mentioned, please enter any questions you have in the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to either answer them during or after our conversation based on what that question is. So Chris, let's set the stage. When we say international partners, what do we mean? Can you be specific?
Sure. So for the purposes of today's conversation, partner just means anyone that you might have a contractual relationship with that's involved in the sale of your product or service overseas. So, right, this can take a lot of forms. There's a lot of ways that you can enter a foreign market. Traditional mindset here, right? Distributors or agents, right? Similar that you might have in domestic markets. Important to know the difference, right? Distributors take possession of your product. Agents are out there selling on your behalf, but they never take possession. Just important for setting the terms, especially as you're dealing in foreign markets. Make sure you want to clarify that with your partner before you get underway. But it could also be things like contract manufacturers. There are plenty of companies that decide rather than producing domestically, shipping product, maybe it's really heavy or maybe it's spoils quickly or whatever the case may be, they may decide to identify a contract manufacturer to service the market that they're in or a particular region that you're interested in. If your business is really tied to your intellectual property, you might have a licensing agreement with a partner in that foreign market where, hey, you're licensing out that concept, that idea, that technology, that's going to be your partner in that foreign market. It might also be, somebody that's kind of involved in the logistical elements or the movement of the product, particularly for the purpose of this conversation, what we would call indirect export partners. Everyone that we've spoken with so far, they're based in those foreign markets. This could also be related to groups that might be stateside, but helping you to enter that foreign market. They're actually kind of executing that international export on your behalf. That could be export management companies or piggyback partners. Export management companies, EMCs, these are entities that are really experts in international trade. They may not have deep sectoral expertise, but they are, you're working with them. There's an American company, and then they are the turnaround and facilitating that international sale. Piggyback partners, on the other hand, they are sectoral experts. They're often companies in related fields. So you might have a relationship with a person or with an entity that your product or service gets sold alongside, Well, if they go and make a sale in an international market that you're interested in, you say, let me join you. You might be shipped in the same container. If they have a product that you sell and your service, or if they sell a product and your service is related to that, you might join them for that. They are maybe not experts in the international trade element, but they are in a related sector entering that foreign market and you're going with them. All of these are examples of partners that we're going to be discussing today. And it's not to say that there are not other groups that you're going to be working with that are not, there's plenty of other very important entities that you're going to work with or even rely on to be, successful in that foreign market. There's all kinds of groups. We actually had our first webinar in this series was discussing the role of the customs broker. Very important group or entity to know and work well with. Freight forwarders, right? There's going to be a whole team that works with you. But for the purposes of today, partners, we're talking about, right, you and some party that is on the other side of the sale into that foreign market. So let me see. I will get to that question as we go along here. So, right, all different types of partners here. The format is going to be partly on your appetite. It's going to be some of that research that you put on the front end, right? What's the right fit for you in the market that you're looking at? And you might choose different types of partners for different markets, but right, okay, maybe you've decided I'm looking for a distributor in market X. Well, then what? So it can be a little bit hard to sometimes identify the right partner in that target market. But there are some kind of tools and strategies to make that easier. So Aaron, do you mind kind of just sharing some of those strategies for finding a good partner?
Sure. And Chris, I think it's important that you draw that distinction between, you need a good team surrounding you to be successful internationally, and that can include, a licensed customs broker, your freight forwarder, your international bank, your attorney, but that partner is the one that is on the ground representing you right at that intersection between the final end user and yourself. So integral to that sales transaction. And, you don't need to go about searching for this individual all alone, either in the wilderness of the internet and Google, or going to a country and trying to find somebody all by yourself. There's some amazing services that are offered through both the federal government and the state level governments. So I'd like to talk about first a really powerful tool that's offered by the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's called the Gold Key. And the U.S. Commercial Service is connected to all of the U.S. embassies around the world. Either they have somebody in that embassy or they're represented by the State Department, and they are there to assist you in helping you to find vetted individuals who could serve as your partner on the ground in that market. So a gold key starts with validation that this market you have potential in this market. You're not going to be able to just sign up for this service in any market without having those underlying fundamentals about this being a good market fit for you. But once that determination has been made, you'll have the chance to fill out a questionnaire describing the type of attributes that you're looking for in your partner, right? What kind of industry contacts do you want them to have? What knowledge, what other entities they might be representing in that market, the kind of experience that they have on it. And then the U.S. Embassy there will set up to 5 meetings for you to meet with a different prospective partners on the ground there. And that's your chance to interview them. And with the gold key, you'll have somebody from the U.S. Embassy there with you. So you're just coming to that meeting with just a powerful presentation, because you have the U.S. government sitting beside you during these interviews. To make sure that you're, getting another set of eyes and ears on this. And it's just a really powerful tool. and that's called the Gold Key, and that's under $1,000 for U.S. small businesses. And that would be probably one of the first things that I would investigate in finding a partner overseas. They also offer other services like the International Partner Search, which doesn't give you the same degree of hand-holding that a Gold Key will, but that can still provide you leads that you can then follow up on your own and see if it's a good fit for your company and what you're trying to do. On the state level, many states have programs. Almost all of the states have programs overseas that lead trade missions or that support trade shows, or they can find you partners in that market through different consultants that they have. Every state is going to be different. Here in Virginia, we're lucky because the Virginia Economic Development Partnership has just a very robust offering of services and representation, and so many markets. I believe it's close to 80 or so markets. I might be a little off on that, but it's an expansive reach that the state of Virginia has. Now, some states aren't going to have that same reach, but they might be just covering some of the big international markets for your state. So they could have a presence in, the top 10 markets, or be organizing trade missions over a 2-year period and with a group of 10, 12 countries, let's say. So it's another great way to get into the market. Again, you have that government assistance that's going to be making sure that the meetings that you have are with credible people that have been vetted, that can be your boots on the ground there. And just quickly to go into the difference between a trade mission and a trade show. I think a lot of people will know this, but a trade mission, of course, is a group of companies traveling together and to make a foreign market visit. And within that, you can have a vertical trade mission, which is all the companies belong to the same sector, the same industry focus, or a horizontal one where it takes businesses from all different kinds of sectors for a series of different meetings. The latter, both of them can be really good just in terms of opening some high-level doors that you might not get by just doing a Gold Key, right? Maybe you can have a reception at the embassy, or meet with a minister, a foreign minister of some sort. And that's the value in doing that. And of course, there's also a lot of trade shows. These are going to be industry specific. They're typically organized by a big trade association in that industry. And this is an incredible opportunity to meet all the players in that industry, from potential partners to your competition, to vendors, to what Chris was referring to as the piggyback partners, the people that maybe are a little adjacent to what you do, but could be a good collaborator in that. And that really leads to another great way to find a partner, which is networking, of course. So whether it's with your industry specific trade association or asking customers, but I also encourage you to take your time and visit a World Trade Center. And that might seem like, hey, that's not necessarily going to be people from my industry that are going to be there. But these are people who are interacting with global business leaders on a regular basis. And that networking, you never know what you're going to turn up by making those contacts with different people. Of course, if it's a procurement type of sale, the award is going to be publicly announced. So just following up on that, reaching out to the company that won the contract, inquire about different opportunities to partner, what you can bring to the table, see if there's some of the same companies winning these firms around the world. How can you create that partnership with them, that's always also another good way to find that partner. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that you got to be careful about if a partner just reaches out to you. And so, this is a whole nother subject that we can get into in a future webinar. But Chris, can you just talk a little bit about what some things that exporters, U.S. companies should be aware of when they get unsolicited contact from a potential partner, somebody who wants to represent you? What are some of the pitfalls that could be behind that, or that the exporter should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right that, if you've met a partner through one of these kind of more curated, kind of pre-vetted areas, you have a little bit less to worry about. You still want to do your due diligence, but it definitely comes up, and we hear from companies often that, hey, I've started to think about international markets because all of a sudden a purchase order showed up in my inbox from country X, Y, or Z. It's great to start thinking about that, right? And, sales are nice, but you want to make sure that they're coming to the table with the best intentions and that their success is additive to your success. Because there are times where, whether it's scam or just right, not necessarily in your best interest, there are sometimes partners that you need to be mindful of. And that looks like a lot of things. Of course, there's just quality and reputation, right? Are they good players in this space? Are they, above board? Do they do a good job representing the brands that they work with, or whatever it might be? That aside, and there's just quality overall, but then there's also other forms that this specifically looks like. We're talking about what partners might be doing in foreign markets. So there's a phenomenon, I guess you could call it, an entity, it might be considered a line collector. So this is, might happen in a sector where there's a lot of different competitors, right, that are competing for the same customers, not something super unique. It might be a consumer product, something like that. Line collectors are typically distributors, and they view they basically want to be the one-stop shop for whatever your product or service is. So they're going to have a portfolio that contains every variant of whatever it is. Chewing gum, right? Yeah, the only place for chewing gum. Great. Well, you're not going to be getting all that much attention from them because they have 20, 100 other competitors that they're also representing. So you're not feeling like you're going to get the care that you need to actually make a dent yourself. They might have huge market share. Oh yeah, 85% of the gum sold in whatever Spain comes from us, Chicles Internacionales. But well, what does that actually mean, right? In practice for the individual exporter, may not be a great situation.
Right. The guy could have his favorite chewing gum, and that's what he's pushing.
Yeah, it's true. And that's just what's going to look like for you. So you're not going to be able to get that care and attention, right? So important to note, just say, hey, let's look at your portfolio, see what it looks like. Similar but kind of distinct phenomenon is called a block your product buyer. This might be more in a sector where you're going head to head with a small number of competitors. And if you have a partner that approaches you and says, hey, I want to represent you in this market, well, it's important to note if they carry your competitor, because if they do, and they have massive market share for that competition, they might be trying to sign you on to put you on a shelf and not move your product in order to preserve the market share of your competition. For them, hey, we're already successful here. We're trying to make sure that, this exporter, this, second to market company isn't going to come up and gobble up market share. Well, hey, we have an exclusive representation here, and we're never going to actually sell your product. Important to know, right? Both of those instances, you can kind of head that off to an extent by asking about their portfolio. Just saying, what other competition, what are your brands that you represent? What companies do you work with? They're not willing to share it, and you know that you have a direct competitor, or that you're getting a really crowded space. might be a little bit wary about working with that partner.
And I'm sure this is where having a strong contract with your
Mhm.
attorney is probably also important.
Yes, yes, right. This is making sure that you're upfront about that, stuff. You do your homework, you know who you're representing, and then setting expectations. And we're going to talk about sort of the contracts and that relationship once you've zeroed in on your partner in a bit here. Sometimes there's only so many players in the market to work with, and you have to make sure that you're arranging that relationship in a way where you have a chance of being successful. Another risk that is somewhat amplified in international markets is the risk of non-payment. So there might be a partner that you're interested in working with. You have payment terms which are pre-negotiated, and it can be a sale by sale basis, but you might want to set that up front, right? So say, hey, here's what we're going to be doing. I want at least some cash up front. But there is definitely incidents of non-payment from foreign markets. Varies the extent to which this occurs varies from market to market, but right, these are companies that you maybe have never met in person. It might just be an email address, and it can look really appetizing to go after this big sale, and you load up a 20-foot container and you get it going, and you expect the payment's going to be released as it leaves the port. Well, all of a sudden that email goes dead on you. That happens. It's people often kick themselves after it. Oh, I couldn't have imagined it. But, they do a very good job of seeming legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
So coming up with, right, just to try and insulate yourself from this, right? If it's a partner that's been vetted, maybe that you've met on a reverse trade mission, or somebody that you've done a gold key on, whatever, you can feel confident that they're probably good partners, but there are tools to offset this risk, which, there's export credit insurance is the best tool. Exim Bank, the Export Import Bank of the US, has a list of agencies that they'll accept as it releases credit reports. So there's can make sure that they're credit worthy. There's this insurance that you can get for a small upfront fee. They'll actually go and kind of be able to get you back most of your funds in the event of non-payment, and then it's their job to track down that buyer. And the U.S. government probably has more resources to track down the buyer and get that payment than you do as an individual exporter. So, right, really just making sure that you're aware of that risk, and if it's mitigating that at least initially as you get the conversation going, there are tools for that. Another thing to be mindful of is intellectual property, making sure that you're protecting your IP from theft. If your business is tied to intellectual property, if you have protections, and certainly patents, but that can go for just brands, right? Your trademarks too. You want to make sure that you have a strategy to make sure that that's protected. You hear of people who wind up finding a contracting partner in certain countries, then all of a sudden you see knockoffs coming out, and it might be produced out of the same factory. And all of a sudden you just created competition for yourself. So you want to make sure that you have a strategy for your intellectual property. There are tools, if you file for a patent in the US, there's kind of looking to foreign markets. There's a patent cooperation treaty in certain markets that you can file in foreign markets that at a lower cost if you do it within a certain time frame. And that's a topic for another discussion. But making sure that you have some of that just in mind if that's important to you. And then, right, then there's of course like the real big baddies here, right? Things like denied party lists are somebody that no US company should ever be selling to, because the US government has a red flag on them. There are certain markets that are off limits. There are certain individuals that are off limits. And that goes kind of not just the person that you're directly dealing with, but somebody involved in the company. You really want to make sure that you know who that partner is, so that you don't find out there's a minority stake owned by somebody that's really doing something bad in the world, bad enough that the US government pointed a finger directly at them. It does happen, and sometimes it may not be directly in the market that you're selling to, but it might be partially owned by somebody else or whatever. You have to make sure that they're not going to turn around and sell it on to somebody else, things like that. Just making sure that you're safe. So denied party list is just a list that the US government keeps. If you you can Google it and it'll come right up, denied party list. It's very clear as to who is and is not on that. just making sure that you're safe there. And again, some of the tools that Aaron mentioned about finding partners might help to allay some of these risks. So your gold key, right, you're getting introductions to parties that you can feel a little bit more confident about. There's also a tool called the International Company Profile that before you go and sign a contract or establish a relationship with somebody, the US government will do a full vetting of that company, making sure that they're above board, and that's great. If you meet somebody on a vetted reverse trade mission, so if USTDA, there's an organization called SUSTA, which works with agricultural and value add producers, Select USA, state organizations, trade organizations, if they are bringing foreign buyers to the market, chances are they've done their homework on them. They're going to be above board. You could still do a little bit of due diligence, but you could feel a little bit more confident than, that they're going to be a good partner rather than that blind email that you get, at 3 a.m. Say, I want some of your product. Well, okay, maybe that's worth a little bit more investigation. And some of this, right, can just be simple, right? First round, just Google them. Do they seem to exist in the world? Do they have some sort of public profile? Is there social media? Is there a website? Is their URL legitimate? Are they publicly visible? Do they present in trade, kind of media? Do they have speaking engagements? Are there user reviews? If your partner seems really like kind of hated by everybody in the market, maybe that's not somebody you should be working with. This is true domestically as well, but it's certainly true if you don't get to meet somebody face to face and actually feel them out. Again, this is relational in nature. If somebody comes forward and it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If somebody comes through and says, I want to fill a container, I'm going to get it here, I'm going to establish you, this is going to be great, I own all of these retail outlets and I'm going to be able to move your product, this is perfect. Sometimes you'll hear of scams where somebody says, I want to bring over a small shipment first, they'll pay for that, and then, okay, give me net 30 on the full container, and then they disappear, right? That's probably a little too good to be true if they don't have a website, but right, they're coming forward with this amazing deal. Just a little bit of care on the front end will make sure that you're going to avoid those big fiascos. And in general, with all of this stuff, as Aaron mentioned, the U.S. Commercial Service have people in most markets based at the embassies there. Absolutely have a good relationship with your commercial service officer, because that boots on the ground intel is going to be absolutely vital, right? You can do all the homework you want from your computer, but knowing on the ground what the situation looks like is going to be really, really helpful. So just whatever it is, even if it's something you feel really confident about, it's worth having conversations. It can't hurt to just put it in front of somebody just to make sure you're fully set before you go and establish that relationship. So, right, those are I'm not trying to scare anybody here, just want to make sure that we're keeping these things in mind, right? Things that may be present in domestic markets too, but are a little bit more, present a little bit more risk in foreign markets because you don't have that face-to-face. But if you are, right, kind of identifying a partner, you say, oh, this person or this organization looks pretty good, you have to start pulling together info and getting that on there, both for your own purposes and, for reporting purposes, or if you're going to be sharing it with others. So when you have a company that you're working with that's looking to line up a new partner, what kind of information do you suggest that they gather as they're working on setting up that relationship?
Sure. Well, just to kind of continue on, a little bit of your line of thinking around making sure you've done some due diligence, right? You want to have things like their full name, and if they're using if they're known by any other names or aliases, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but just wanting to make sure that you have that information. You're going to want to double check, is their email or company name, is it really similar to somebody else in the market that might be a legitimate player and it's just a little bit off from that? Are they trying to really ride the coattails of another more established company and just change it a little bit? This could be red flags in doing that. Again, you mentioned kind of making sure that you're not doing business with either individuals or in countries that as a U.S. Citizen, you're not permitted to do. So making sure that, hey, if there's a minority owner in this company, making sure that they're not on a denied party list, or they don't come from, North Korea, Iran, Cuba, Russia, etc. So having that information about your partner is going to be important. Beyond that, you're going to want to know, like, do they have experience importing, your product or something similar to that? Or are you going to bear the brunt of, getting the goods through that customs overseas? And that might be something that, as an experienced exporter, you're okay taking on, but just having an idea about really clear guidance as to whether or not that's what you want to do, and so forth. So just understanding your risk, making sure that you feel confident in what you're agreeing to do, and you have confidence in your partner and their role in bringing this into the country and selling it, are going to be key things. But beyond that, you're going to want to make sure that you guys are a good fit temperamentally, that you have a rapport, that you're developing trust. It's so important that you have that confidence in each other, that you're confident that they will do their work, and that they have confidence in you as well. So a good distributor, they're going to be vetting you just as you're vetting them, and they're used to American companies that are sometimes rush into foreign markets when our economy is experiencing some trouble. That's when exporters really start to look overseas, at least from America. And that distributor is aware of that reputation for Americans. So they want to know that you're really committed to this, that when they say they're going to sell and represent for you in that market, that when they put in that order for you, that you're going to be reliable, that you're a reliable source of that. Because if you miss that, then that's their reputation, and that's their business that's being affected as well. So, you'd want your distributor to be asking you some tough questions too, just as you're asking them. So Chris, after a company has found that partner, there's still a lot of things that need to be ironed out, in terms of how you set the terms for the relationship, and agreeing on the delineation of responsibilities and what that partnership looks like. Can you kind of walk us through some of these considerations?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that should be laid out on the front end to avoid miscommunication, right? You might think that you're aligned with your partner in that market, and then realize, oh, I thought we were doing it this way. Well, I thought we were doing it this way. And that's where a lot of friction comes from, just assumption. And that might be on your part, on their part. It might be you assuming that the kind of traditional arrangements that hold true in the US also apply to that foreign market. It might just not be customarily done that way. So being explicit about things that you think are just commonplace, it's really important. I should say none of the things I'm going to talk about are going to have to be in place for the duration of your relationship with this partner. The market evolves. Ideally, you're going to be growing this relationship over time. So the terms of your partnership should be evolving as well. But as it goes through every step along the way, and certainly at the outset, you need to be as explicit as possible about, right, just how things are going to work. So it's hard enough to do business in that, whatever field you're in, you don't need to have these things getting in the way as well. So first I'll say, right, just exactly what product or services your partner has the right to represent in that market. Again, this does come up. There are companies that will say, okay, I only want you to represent these 3 products in this market. That might be, I can only produce these ones at scale, or I don't want to try and have to make small amounts of all different ones. There's product or service adaptation. So making something workable in a foreign market. If you need to get a CE mark to make your product workable in the EU, or if you have to do label adaptation, whatever it might be, you might not do that for your full product line. You might say, just this one flagship item is what we're going to be starting with, because I've definitely heard instances of where a foreign partner goes and makes a sale for a product that is not sold in that market. And it makes everybody look bad, right? They could have sold the thing that they have the right to sell. But if they didn't know, if they just go to the website and say, oh, here you go, choose what you want, that's not going to look good for anybody. So being very explicit, you might evolve that over time. Like, hey, we're going to start with this one product. As we get established, we can bring on secondary rounds of products. The adaptation costs, you can kind of phase those in over time. You don't have to make everything available from the get-go. Territory, exactly what territory your partner is going to represent. Again, right, there might be a company that works in one market, but then has sister organizations in neighboring markets. They might have a foothold in, let's say, northern Italy, but they represent all of Italy and, some of Austria, whatever. So you want to make sure that you're very clear that exactly what area that they are representing your brand in, knowing that you might expand that over time. So you might want to say, hey, we're going to start here. If things go well, we'll expand that, but you protect yourself. You might want to work with another partner that has more of a stronghold in Southern Italy in that instance. And it can be really hard to actually enforce this, right? I think most businesses are not in the habit of turning down sales. It's not a fun thing to have to do, to say, no, you can't make that sale, but you're setting a precedent if you're allowing your partner to go beyond the bounds of their territory and start making sales, because then they're established there. There's precedence that it's not a good situation. And that can also impinge on other relationships that you might have. Well, why is this person coming here? And that gets to like another thing that you want to lay out early on is exclusivity, right? You might work with more than one partner in a market. Somebody might specialize in e-commerce and somebody might specialize in brick and mortar retail. And you have them, they do different things. One has a warehouse that does all these drop shipments, whatever. The other person sells into your Best Buys or whatever the equivalent is. That's fine. But you want to make sure that as you're defining these territories, you're also keeping very close track of exclusivity. They might have exclusive rights to this one product, but then the other product is open to everyone. But exclusivity is a little bit of leverage that the exporter has in that relationship. Partners want exclusivity. They want to have the sort of full buy-in from the exporter. They want the rights to that product there or service. But if you kind of are strategic about that, you might kind of use that exclusivity as leverage over time to say, hey, if things go well after a certain amount of time, we can grant exclusivity. This is something that can evolve, but just be mindful and be very explicit about what exclusive rights to the market, over what period, in what channels, in what products, right? Open-ended exclusivity for all products in a region, that can be bad if it turns out that they don't perform. Right? That's not something that you necessarily want to give away. You want to be mindful about the capabilities of your partner, right? Selling is generally what you're asking your partner to do, is making those sales, making those deals, and generating revenue for you. But there are plenty of times where in that foreign market, you working in domestic markets, tasks or responsibilities that you take on yourself or your domestic partners might take on for you. Does your foreign partner have the ability to do that themselves? And this can take all kinds of forms. Customer service, right? If your product really requires customer service, if you have some sort of technology with a helpline, well, are they going to help arrange that for you? Based on local hours in the local language. You may not necessarily be able to field calls in the middle of the night from Japan about using something. Well, they might be able to arrange that for you, but it needs to be clear. Warranties, if you're extending warranties in that foreign market, how is that relationship going to be managed? Again, they have the boots on the ground. So if that's going to be built into that, making sure that there's pricing is kind of captured in all of that, that they're capable of actually doing that. if your product or service needs to actually be kind of installed, right? There are plenty of companies that are have something that they need sort of hands-on kind of tech experience. You need to make sure that your partner is able to do that. We have a story of a company that was looking to selling its sensors into a foreign market, and they were finding that they were getting bad reviews. When they went and checked with their partner in that foreign market, they kind of went through an audit just to check to see, and they found out that their sensors were being installed upside down. That's not very helpful. It really hurts their sort of kind of presence in that market, especially early on. So if you're asking your partner to have a certain capability, making sure that you're equipping them to do that too, right? This is the flip side of the coin. You can't just say, well, you need to know how to use our technology. Well, they may not until you train them, and that's your side of that relationship. Other things you want to capture here, right? Just the sort of period of the relationship. What is the time length? You have to make sure that you're giving your partners enough time to establish that market for you. Really, we're talking a minimum of 1 year in most markets. Just takes time to generate that momentum, and it just demonstrates that you're actually making an investment here. This is not just we'll see if we can make a quick buck. Your partners want to see that you're bought into that market. So giving them some sort of period of that relationship. This is when the contract is going to extend over this period. Here's what the terms for renewal are. Not into perpetuity, but also more than 3 months. That's just not really fair. This might not be kind of managed at the sort of high level, but you might want to have that discussion early on before you start actually closing a sale. The currency for your transactions. There's definitely foreign exchange risk if whoever's using the other party's currency is taking a little bit of burden, just if there's the chance of fluctuation not going in their favor. So, right, just making sure you have that discussion early on. There are tools to de-risk that for you, to reduce the sort of impact of foreign exchange risk, but having that conversation. And then finally, if ideally all things are going to go well, but if you have to kind of prepare for the eventuality that something goes awry, and now we're talking about dispute resolution. Right, because we're talking about 2 different countries, there's different sets of laws. It's not kind of automatic as to how you're going to manage those disputes. And so you have to point to what the governing law for your agreement would be. Now, your partner might not want to work in Virginia because that's yours. A lot of times in international relationships, they'll look to New York law, which is pretty neutral, or another state law. Sometimes they'll look at a third country's laws and say that's going to be the sort of venue for any dispute resolution here. UK is a common market that they'll choose because it's neutral set of laws and it's rules based. It doesn't kind of lean one way or the other, right? Just having that down, you can even just have some sort of basic boilerplate in place just to feel confident that if something goes wrong, you're not going to be spending, all of this time just hashing out the venue to hash out the issue, which is pretty painful. So those are, right, all of the things that you can do on the front end to reduce friction, right? Make it clear, give your partner the opportunity to go out, work, add value. Ideally, things go well. But right, there's other things that you can do to actually equip your partner for success, things that you can do as the exporter to contribute to that relationship, demonstrate your commitment, and really kind of get the best performance out of your partner. What are some tools, Aaron, that you've kind of seen people use to kind of get that good performance going in a foreign market?
Sure. Well, you want a motivated partner on the ground. So, like I was saying before, just them having trust in you, that you are committed to that market, and that they can point to those commitments. Whether it's you've given them, marketing collateral, or you visited the market, you're giving them that support that they need in order to be successful, and they can see that you've actually allocated resources to them to make them successful in in their efforts for you. That's going to be real key. And then beyond that, looking at specific things that you can do. Of course, money is the big motivator, but are there other additional rewards for performance that you can provide to them? Maybe more generous payment terms, or a larger territory if they're meeting certain goals, or maybe you didn't start with exclusivity, but after they reach a certain point, you're going to give that to them. Those are all things that are going to get your partner excited about working on your behalf. Of course, celebrating those wins, making sure that that person feels as though, your international efforts aren't just siloed, but that you're contributing to the overall company performance. And you can do that just, by celebrating those in any number of ways, so that it gets the partner feeling like they're part of your team as well. Of course, you're going to want to connect them to your connections in the U.S. Embassy, your partners, or your team that is supporting this. That's a good way to make sure that they feel integrated, they feel part of it, and they're making sure that everything is lining up. Of course, you can bring people over to the U.S. for different training opportunities, or maybe a conference or a trade show that they can attend as well. Getting them involved in different AmChams or industry associations that might be there. It's just another way to really kind of show that you're committed, and that you want them to feel like they're part of this as well. So those would be some of the things, but hopefully we get some good suggestions in our chat here coming up. But Chris, I know we're getting ready to kind of wrap up our webinar here and move to that Q&A. Do you have any parting last advice for our exporters when it comes to working with international partners? Anything you want them to leave here with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of, small businesses that are exporting, international sales may not be a huge percentage of the overall, revenue streams, right? It might be 5-10%. Great. That's beneficial in lots of ways. It's important that you don't just make international sales a thing that also happens, right? This is not just something that kind of is a back burner. Oh, it's a fun hobby. You want to make sure that you're tending the relationship with your foreign partners at least as closely as you do with your domestic partners. You have kind of fewer face-to-face opportunities, fewer touches with that client. There's more distance, both from you to the partner and as well as from you to that market. So you're in some ways asking more of them in those markets. You really want to make sure that you feel confident in them, that they feel confident in you. You have really strong communication channels established. You're getting good intelligence passed back absolutely on them to say, hey, we want to know what's happening in the market. Send us developments, right? Like lean on them, but make sure that you're adding to that relationship yourself. This isn't a one-way street, and you really have to make sure that you feel like you're in sync with that partner if you're going to make inroads into that market. That's my 2 cents. What do you think? Is there anything that you would want people to keep in mind when they're thinking about international partners?
Yeah, I would just say from the U.S. exporter perspective, that success in international markets can take a little bit longer than maybe it does if you're just doing domestic business only. So really showing that commitment to the market, showing that to your partner, hey, we're going to be here. There might be a supply chain crunch, global supply chain crunch, but we're going to do everything we can to get you our product as it's available. We're not going to just neglect you when times are too good in the US, or you're not going to be the first on the chopping block when it comes to continually servicing that relationship, because if you've shown an inattentiveness to that market and to that relationship, and your sales kind of slow to a trickle or stop altogether, building those sales and relationships back up again, especially if you've been introduced to that market, they're going to be viewing you with some skepticism. So making sure that if you're really serious about this, that you're committed and you're showing that commitment to your partner. That's, I think, going to be the best thing in terms of just cultivating those relationships, allowing you to have that long-term sustained relationship in place.
I like it. Are there any other questions? You can use the Q&A function. Feel free to drop them in here if you have anything that you'd like us to answer before we wrap up for the day.
Great.
Well, I think with that, we can probably call it the end of the session. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for this edition of the Virginia SBDC's Trade Talk webinar series. Stay tuned for more details on upcoming sessions. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.
Thanks, Aaron and Chris. This was very informative. I want to thank everyone else who attended today. You will receive an email with a link to the recording. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we hope to see you all at our next session. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.